Well, it's only Chris and I here this week as we push through the hot and humid summer days in the southeast to talk about the recent rains across much of the southeast and whether it will continue in the July edition of the Water Resources Outlook. Convective season is in full swing as it seems daily pop-up thunderstorms spread across parts of the southeast. They have been more widespread this year due to the fact that we have plenty of moisture to work with. So where has the rain been? Well, Alabama, Mississippi, much of Florida, and parts of Georgia have seen the heaviest amounts. At least parts of that rain was from Tropical Storm Cindy last month. We will talk tropical season a little bit later. It looks like lots of rain across the southeast based on our colors, but how does it compare to normal? As you can see from the legend, the greens to the purple colors are above normal, and that is covering most of the southeast. The yellows, the yellows to reds show up sporadically, with the most below normal in the Big Bend of Florida and in the far south near Miami. This summer has already been much different than last summer, a much wetter summer so far. So where have we come since our last Water Resources Outlook? Well, last month we saw a lot more drought and dryness in the southeast. And you'll see that our most recent drought monitor indicates just a little bit of dryness near Augusta, Georgia. At least part of the reason that we see this leftover dryness is from Lake Thurmond. It remains drought-driven because the lakes remain about 6 feet below their expected level for this time of year, and the releases from the reservoir reflect that in Augusta and below. A similar thing is happening at Lake Lanier at the top of the Chattahoochee River, where even though we have had good rainfall through the basin and things have improved significantly, the inflows into Lake Lanier have not been enough to bring the lake level to full pool. However, the yellow line showing the historical median elevation indicates that the pool should be falling during this time of year, and that is certainly not the case. We've been steadily rising throughout the summer. While this may not continue, it has kept these areas from dipping into much deeper drought after the fall and winter dryness. A great indicator of the lack of drought in the southeast is the stream flows. As you can see here, the 28-day average stream flows mostly show normal to above normal conditions with only a few exceptions. Our flood climatology shows us in week 28. We try to remind everyone regularly that flooding can occur on any day or week during the year and they should be prepared. However, for most of the southeast, this is not the time of year we expect widespread flooding unless there is a tropical system involved. The part of the southeast that's different, well, is in central and south Florida. This is the climatology for that area, and this is the wet season in Florida, and it is when we expect to see flooding in those areas. We have seen some flooding, and much of it has to do with isolated heavy rain in some of the smaller basins. And just a reminder, the Southeast RFC issues flood forecasts for many of the larger rivers in the southeast. And make sure and monitor your local weather office for flash flood warnings in your area. These happen very quickly and can be very dangerous, and this is the time of year to expect them anywhere in the southeast. So let's see if Chris can talk a little bit about what we're expecting for our weather.
We're beginning the period under an area of high pressure with a cold front well to the north of the region. This cold front and the associated rainfall will push to the south and enter the region by Saturday, at which time it will stall out and become a stationary front. The stationary front will persist into the midterm period and the early part of next week. Models are indicating that high pressure should return to the area by the end of the midterm period. The 7-day rainfall forecast shows that we're expecting the highest precip amounts in the coastal Carolinas ahead of the stationary front. The Florida Peninsula has been seeing its typical summertime thunderstorms and is expected to continue to do so through the period. The long-term outlook calls for below normal precip due to the expected high pressure over the area. Normal conditions are expected in the Florida Peninsula.
Well, hurricane season is 6 weeks old, and here's kind of a summary of where we are. There was an early storm in April, which I really kind of have a hard time counting for this season, but it does. Our second storm was way down south near South America. And then there's Tropical Storm Cindy, which did have a big impact on the southeast, bringing rain to Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. For the most part, really a pretty normal tropical season so far. Part of the reason I say that it is normal is because of the development areas, and that one did develop in June in the Gulf of Mexico like we would expect. And then as we go further out, you can see where the development areas change. And we'll take a closer look at each of the weeks. We'll continue to do that as we go through the rest of the tropical season. For the middle of July, we still don't get a whole lot of development, but it begins to spread into the Caribbean and the Atlantic Ocean. The last week in July has us looking even further east for development as systems moving off of Africa begin to be the focal point for development. And while the beginning of August doesn't have a huge amount of storms, you can see that tropical storm development is increasing during that time. In our next Water Resources Outlook, it should be very interesting to watch and see how it multiplies and how we do get a lot more storms during that time. And really, August 15th through October 15th is the peak of that season. Here is our July precipitation outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. Now this came out on June 30th, and we're almost halfway through July, and so far it looks like we've had a pretty good forecast. For the most part, we've been pretty wet across the southeast, and that pattern looks to continue at least for another week. The seasonal outlook is swayed by the fact that there is no El Niño or no La Niña in brewing in the Pacific. Therefore, the models are not hinting one way or another about the rain in the southeast. Therefore, we have equal chances for above normal and below normal rainfall from July through September. And this may end up being a running theme as we approach the fall and winter. The October through December outlook doesn't lean one way or another either. Something near normal would help us approach our winter recharge season. So the bottom line, in the short term, it looks like we'll continue to stay active, at least for another week in most of the southeast. And as you can tell, Florida is benefiting from an active wet season, at least across most of Florida. As for the long term, it looks like normal type rainfall is expected, and we're still expecting an above normal tropical season. How that impacts us, we'll have to see, but right now it still looks like to be an above normal tropical season. Our next Water Resources Outlook, we're expecting to record on August 17th, 2017. We'll look forward to talking to you then. Thank you.